Welcome to the latest episode of On the Desk of Brian, an easygoing podcast where I explore a mix of my professional and personal interests. I want to note that while this is being published on Thursday, June 26th, I'm recording it on Sunday, June 22nd. Why does that matter? Well, specifically, when I get to my stories on some sports news. Specifically, I'm recording this before Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And as of this recording, the 2025 NBA draft has not yet taken place. I'll certainly be catching up from the fallout of those events on the next show in a couple of weeks. Starting first in education, I found an interesting article written by Lucas Ropek from Gizmodo titled "AI Cheating is So Out of Hand in America's Schools That Blue Books Are Coming Back." As the title implies, the blue books that were largely disappearing in college classes are making a resurgence. For those who attended in-person university and graduated in the last decade, you may not be familiar with the term. Blue books are analog, bound books, most of which are manufactured by a company called Roaring Spring Paper Products and used by colleges for students to write in-class essays. The article states that Texas A&M and the University of Florida wrestled buying 30% and 50% of these books respectively. Oddly enough, the era of AI becoming more prevalent has been profitable to the paper company as more schools are trying to curtail dependence on LLM products like ChatGPT for college students learning subjects. In addition, the author points out that 89% of college students were found to have used ChatGPT to complete their homework assignments, and tools used by instructors and professors to detect the use of AI assistants often fail. As such, it seems that some colleges are going low-tech to gauge their students' mastery of the content. I'd be curious if this trend is something that continues or even gains momentum, or will fizzle as curriculum standards change with the times and AI's prevalence in more aspects of our lives and its acceptance in society to solve complex problems takes its place. I found another article about AI for a different audience, this one for educators in the K-12 classroom. This article from Edutopia was written by Amir Taran Ayers and is titled "Using AI as a Thought Partner, Not a Shortcut." This one's asking the instructors to embrace the technology of using LLMs, using them as a tool just like any other tool to deliver a message. The article goes on to provide an example of an English teacher sending a memo to other staff members asking them to unpack teaching standards into measurable goals. She can use ChatGPT as a thought partner through helping them to refine a prompt. Another example in the article had another English teacher focus on her goal of teaching students about claims, counterclaims, reasons, and evidence. While an LLM can certainly come up with aspects relating to her inquiry, the LLM doesn't necessarily know her students. Understanding her students' likes in pop culture, the teacher was able to partner with the LLM by feeding it more details. In this case, the students have an interest in rap musicians Kendrick Lamar and Drake and the battles they have with one another. By refining those details, the LLM comprised a lot stronger example for her students and one that'll be more meaningful and connect with her audience. I think we may be at an interesting time when it comes to AI, and more specifically LLMs. We see the struggle in education at all levels. Should its use be celebrated or banned? And I think the correct answer is probably somewhere in the middle. AI is not going away. When educating students, we must prepare them for the future and ensure that they have the tools necessary and the understanding of how to use those tools so that they can open doorways to great opportunities. So that said, there's a lot of work to do in many educational systems to reach that responsible use of those tools. If you don't know Stephen Day, he was an economics professor and is now the director of economic education at Virginia Commonwealth University. He produces a blog called Paper Robots, helping families talk about money and work, and I really enjoy reading his articles, and they always provide insightful opportunities to help educate young people on their choices and the world around them, especially as it applies to economics and personal finance. An article that Dr. Day wrote last month was called Grading the Expert's Money Advice, and in the article he reviewed a Forbes article that described 10 different activities that were supposed to teach kids about money. Day believes that kids need to have opportunities to make meaningful choices about money over time, and I'll focus here on ones that Day gave higher scores to. The first one was needs versus wants flashcards, and he gave this one a B minus, noting that this would be an activity that a kid may only have minimal engagement in, maybe even for only 10 minutes, and that there is a lot more to learn in this type of area after learning about needs and wants, such as goals and priorities. A game that Stephen gave a B to was called Buy the Brand Game. In this game, when a kid asks a parent for a branded product, the parent can ask back if it's better to own the product, like that, or the brand. Outcomes from this type of discussion could lead to tracking stock prices, and it gives kids another perspective that they may not often see, that of a producer rather than just a consumer. Dr. Day loves the comparison shopping game. In this game, you have kids help with comparison shopping. This type of activity can help kids develop critical thinking skills that are applicable in a number of applications. Another hit with Day is the classic lemonade stand. There are so many economic principles that can be taught from this game, including costs of inputs, like ingredients, reacting to data, such as making adjustments to prices, sizes of cups, and recipes, and can help encourage entrepreneurism. Day concludes his article by reiterating the importance of parents talking to their kids about money and responsible decision-making that they then can emulate. Moving into sports news. Okay, first let's talk about the Suns and the NBA. Personally, I haven't really paid much attention to the NBA playoffs as I usually do, but I have been keeping up on highlights, and the NBA Finals have not disappointed. The battle between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers stretched to Game 7, when many analysts prior to the series thought that the Thunder would win in either a sweep or maybe 5 games at worst. So again, I'm recording this before Game 7 starts, so I'll report back on the next episode about the result. Moving into Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. The Suns proved last season that they cannot win with the current team they have. Changes were needed. The pieces of the roster that could gather the most trade value were Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant. And of those three, Suns management will not likely only be able to consider trading Kevin Durant. Devin Booker isn't going anywhere. He's the cornerstone of the franchise. Bradley Beal is also not going anywhere, at least for the time being, because he has a no-trade clause, and that he really hasn't been playing amazing as of late, coupled with constant injuries. Now, with such an expensive salary, it's not like he's gathering a lot of attention either. So that just leaves Durant, and Durant can still put up a lot of points. He contributes a ton of stats. He also just has 1 year left on his contract. So in the end, the Phoenix Suns did make a trade with the Houston Rockets this morning, Sunday, June 22nd. So in exchange for Durant, the Suns received shooting guard Jalen Green, small forward Dylan Brooks, the number 10 pick in the draft this week, and 5 second-round draft picks. Now, in February 2023, the Suns had to give up a lot. They gave up Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 unprotected first-round picks, and a 2028 first-round pick swap just to get Durant. So that certainly was a lot to give up than they got in return. However, if you think about it, Durant does turn 37 this year, and this trade provides some youth for the Suns. And I really hope that the Suns are able to capitalize on the draft or with future trades in the offseason to bring in a strong point guard. Time will tell. So that brings us to the NBA draft on June 25th and 26th. It'll be very interesting because as of this recording on Sunday, the Phoenix Suns are picking 10th, 29th, and 52nd. They may have an additional pick in the second round, depending on what some of those years of those second round picks are from the Durant trade. I'm definitely excited to share with you more on the next show in a couple weeks on my thoughts on the draft. Moving over to baseball news, the Arizona Diamondbacks are, as of this recording, 8 games out of the division lead, and I believe about 4 games back from having the wild card spot. So that said, in their last 10 games, they're 7-3. They most recently took 2 of 3 in a series with the struggling Rockies and take on the struggling White Sox and Marlins in their next 2 series. It really is definitely a mixed bag, though to project how they're going to end up doing, as they do continue to struggle with injuries, especially with pitching. There are currently 8 pitchers that are injured for the D-backs. It's difficult to really have any winning momentum with that many injured at any key position. Looking at football, it's pretty quiet. Team activities will start up later in July. Personally, I'm excited to exercise my right to vote as a shareholder of the Green Bay Packers coming up. The annual shareholder meeting occurs this year on July 25th. Moving into technology news. Some updates there. Last 2 weeks have been rather quiet on my end. Haven't really installed any new software nor utilized any new hardware, but in a couple weeks I'll begin to refocus on organizing some digital files and scanning in some paper files too, and may have some updates as some software in that area. Looking at Apple, there's a couple pieces of Apple news I wanted to bring in this week. First, I found an article that I found on 9to5Mac by Ryan Christoffel, who wrote about some new features coming to the Reminders app in iOS 26. Besides the updated visuals coming to the app through Liquid Glass, there's a couple more features that are updated, and I love using the Reminders app. First, if you want to create a new reminder, it's easier than ever. New reminders will be available to be created through the Control Center, the lock screen, and the Action button. Another feature being added is the ability to, using Apple Intelligence, allow auto-categorization in your reminders list. And Christoffel adds that reminders can create intelligent sections inside your lists and automatically sort your tasks into them. In addition, suggested reminders will also be created that are based on some of the content that you may share with reminders through emails and websites. And you can also swipe on in your phone app on your recent call log to create a reminder to call someone back. Another story that also involves iOS 26 comes from Tim Hardwick at Mac Rumors in an article titled Apple Passwords App Gains Version History Feature. As the name implies, the Apple Passwords app will now include a version history of stored logins. The history will show not only previous passwords, but also the date when they were changed. The updated Passwords app feature will be available on iOS 26, iPad OS 26, and Mac OS Tahoe. Unfortunately, there isn't a way to update the Passwords app at the moment with these improvements, so if you don't want to update your machine to a beta, you're going to have to wait till the fall to take advantage of these changes. Okay, now we have our Not a Sponsor segment. This episode's Not a Sponsor is proudly brought to you by Roaring Spring Blue Books, boldly taking education back to a simpler time before cut, paste, prompt became an academic strategy. Are you an instructor tired of playing detective with AI detection tools that proudly boast 99% accurate, but somehow flag Shakespeare as suspicious? Do you long for the good old days when only AI in the classroom was the anxious imagination of your students? Well, Blue Books are here to help. With our premium, non-digital, totally unhackable, 100% analog bound paper books, you too can watch your students panic in real time as they stare at the terrifying sight of a blank page, with no autocomplete, no Grammarly, and no ChatGPT, and no rescue. And parents, rest easy knowing your tuition dollars are going to support the newest old solution to AI cheating, the fine art of handwriting. Yes, writing, that forgotten skill that teaches students endurance, cramping, and the subtle art of deciphering their own scribbles weeks later. But wait, there's more. Each Blue Book features a sturdy cardboard cover to absorb sweaty palms, lines slightly too narrow for comfortable writing, and that signature light blue hue, especially engineered to induce flashbacks to midterms gone by. Roaring Spring Blue Books. If you can write it, you probably learned it, or at least remembered something for 90 minutes. Available at bookstores everywhere, or in bulk at universities desperately trying to hold back the rising AI tide, one scribbled essay at a time. Thank you to ChatGPT for today's Not a Sponsor segment. Okay, next up we have our streaming news in our entertainment section. So some programming that I've been streaming over the last couple weeks on Apple TV Plus, I've really been enjoying the Friday night baseball coverage. And I know this one is a controversial one, as there are a lot of people who are frustrated that the games that Apple airs on Fridays are exclusive to Apple TV Plus. In other words, the two games that are on Apple's Friday night baseball coverage aren't shown anywhere else, even if someone does subscribe to MLB TV. So for me, I'm not an MLB.TV subscriber, nor do I currently have a cable package. So my only two MLB games a week are those that I catch on Friday evenings. Another piece of programming that I've been enjoying is catching up with Shark Tank episodes on Hulu. I used to watch the first few seasons when they originally aired, but then I had given up cable service and I'd stopped seeing a lot of the newer episodes. So probably about a year and a half ago, I started catching up with some episodes, and I've really been catching up. I'm already on season 11. I love seeing products and services that I recognize in the marketplace. One of my all-time favorites is the Ring doorbell. All the Sharks had passed on it, and just a couple years after, it had sold to Amazon, I believe, for about $2 billion. Moving forward in some other news, specifically with video games and Xbox, I wanted to discuss an article that I found on The Verge by Tom Warren in his article titled "Microsoft's Next-Gen Xbox has an AMD chip inside and it's not locked to a single store." He discusses the story that broke on June 17th. Microsoft is confirming on a partnership with chip producer AMD to run the next series of Xbox hardware, and specifically through a portfolio of devices, including next-generation Xbox consoles in your living room and in your hands. So this reinforces the brand messaging that Microsoft has recently been touting for Xbox, in that the games should always be with you, where you play games across a multitude of different ways, whether it's on PC, a console, an Xbox handheld, or even in the cloud. However, in addition, Xbox president Sarah Bond said that the experience of playing games on this Xbox hardware shouldn't be tied to a single store either. That last statement really then suggests that players will be able to play games on their next-gen Xbox devices or experiences from other stores other than the Microsoft Store, which may include current competing digital stores such as Steam, Epic, or GOG. Okay, so that wraps up another episode of On the Desk of Brian. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Please visit my website, brian8944.com, so you can keep up with all my ongoing and upcoming projects. You can also contact me there with any feedback you may have. You can also find me as a panelist most Tuesday evenings on the MacVoices podcast, hosted by Chuck Joyner. In addition, I'll be presenting at MacStock in Crystal Lake, Illinois on Sunday, July 13th. If you aren't familiar, MacStock is a great technology conference focused on the Apple ecosystem. It has an incredible lineup of presenters who will be presenting over its 3 days, July 11th through the 13th. If you are interested in attending and also saving $50, please register using my code BRIAN8944. This offer expires July 10th. And that will be back in a couple of weeks. So until then, so long for now.